Welcome back for our second installment in our look at China during the post-classical age. Now we're going to take a look at the trade they're involved in and the culture that spreads across China. Now, as we've already looked at earlier in this unit, we have the Silk Roads and the Indian Ocean trade that are bringing new ideas and new peoples to China. And China is also sending out some of their ideas and their products. Their main product being silk, but they also have porcelain, paper, and some other very important products that people across the rest of the world don't have. But there are some new products that come about as well, like gunpowder. Gunpowder is accidentally discovered by Chinese alchemists, and they almost burn their place down through the explosion that they have when they make it, and they realize that this could be a good tool, and so they use it to make fireworks for celebrations, but they also use it in the military as what they call a fire lance, where they shoot projectiles out of a bamboo shoot, which is kind of the predecessor to the gun. We'll see this gunpowder transform, or the use of the gunpowder transform as it goes across the Silk Road and the Indian Ocean trade to where we get the cannons, the large cannons that you might picture in the late medieval period, and eventual guns and muskets that will really change warfare forever and lead us into the modern styles of warfare that we have today. So gunpowder will be modified and will eventually be brought back to China, but that'll be much later. Paper making is sent across, and we also have the printing press invented at this time, and the printing press with movable text, so that you don't have to carve everything out on one page. You can put these different blocks in there that then work for that printing process, and then you take those blocks out and you put them back in. And sometimes there's some contention here between the Chinese inventing it and the Europeans inventing it. Most likely the Chinese invented it first, and then Gutenberg, either around the same time or after seeing designs of it, creates his own in Europe, in Germany, and that then allows it to spread across the borders all the way to there, and for printing to be a major thing in Europe and allow knowledge to spread there. There's also the belief that the compass was made in China. There's a rudimentary compass that helped people kind of decide how they're going to build their house and where to put things, which we call feng shui. You have that going on. You have a rudimentary compass with that. Their chariot spins around on a block. But then we eventually get the modern compass with a needle in a bowl of water, or what will eventually become a kind of container that has the needle floating and will point to the north. And that will deeply change or significantly change how we trade on the open seas and how we navigate on the open sea and also on land. Now, China didn't only export things, they actually brought things in from abroad. Some of the major things they brought in were things like sugar and cotton and the farming techniques that go with them. They could never do as much as the Indians did, where these are being imported from, but they do bring in a lot of that because they don't have those resources at home. They also bring in the rice from Vietnam, as we discussed in the previous video, that led to a population boom. And they also bring in some other technologies like the Persian windmills, as you see pictured here next to the paper making process, that helped make grinding of grains more efficient. Now, with all this trade going on, China is relatively peaceful and welcomes it. However, there are times where we have issues with foreigners and that the Chinese start to fear them, and they sometimes go around and attack foreign settlements in China, or foreign trading centers in China, and that will cause some problems. But for the most part, the traders and the Chinese live in relative peace or harmony. Now, goods and services and ideas aren't the only thing being traded, but also religions are spreading across this. As we saw when we looked at Buddhism, Buddhism will spread out of India and will eventually reach China. And it's during this time period that it really takes a foothold in China, and that is because of the collapse of the Han Dynasty. with the collapse of that dynasty, Taoism and Confucianism are looked at as failed philosophies, and so people are looking for a new one to help bring unity back to China. And Buddhism is the one that fills that gap. Foreign leaders will adopt it, like the Sui and the Tang dynasties, who are originally foreign leaders, foreign tribes on the fringes of the empire that come in and attack and conquer and create new dynasties. They'll adopt it, but also missionaries from Buddhist monasteries are sent throughout China and set up monasteries where then they provide social services for the people in that local region, whether it's medical care or aid in and helping with hard circumstances or whatever it is. And this is all because of the practices of Buddhism and the ideas that are in Buddhism. And the Buddhism that we're seeing spread along this is primarily the Mahayana Buddhism, which is a belief in many gods that is the one that really spreads easily, unlike Theravada Buddhism, which is the more agnostic, atheistic version that is more about internal or internal looking into one's own self to reach enlightenment. While Mahayana is you can pray to the gods and ask the gods or the bodhisattvas for help in reaching it. Now this will change China a little bit, but to change China to be brought in, it has to be modified a little bit because the Chinese don't understand it initially. It's the same with anything that gets kind of lost in translation. So like the idea of Indian Dharma doesn't really make sense to the Chinese, and so that gets replaced with the word Tao, or with the idea of Tao, which is to follow the way, which is kind of like Dharma, which is the duty. Morality that is brought up in Buddhism is changed to filial piety because that's a bigger feature in Chinese culture than morality or kind of following the golden rule. And then a new thing that is added is this idea that husbands get to control their wives more, which is left over from Confucianism. And eventually what will happen is, although Buddhism takes a major foothold, it will never become hugely practiced enough to where it becomes a solid philosophy or religion in China, and will eventually be pressed against from groups like the Song Dynasty and later Tang Dynasty to push the Buddhists out because they think they're gaining too much power because of their fear of foreigners, which we call xenophobia. And this will lead the Buddhists to lose their special status of not paying taxes and being major merchant centers, or kind of, maybe not merchant centers is the right word, but the hotels for the travel between China and other regions of the world. The one difference here is, although Tibet is not really controlled by China at all, Mahayana Buddhism will take a major foothold in the region of Tibet in what is today southwest China, and will have a lasting impact there, and will always have from there spread over to China, and always have kind of a little bit of influence through the Neo-Confucianism that is developed, which combines Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism.